live, I believe. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to be recording a live episode of the podcast today. I haven't done this in a while. I've done this before where I would do it here live with people that are here. So one of the things that'll be different, even though it's a live stream, I'm not going to interact with people as I'm going. I've got my notes for what I'll be talking about today in the podcast. I just thought this would be a fun way to... I've always enjoyed doing this before, where I have people they can sit in on the live stream if they like, or they don't have to. Got the time right here on when I'm going to begin the live stream. So anybody that's joining will know. And all right, looks like some people are starting to show up on the live stream. That's excellent. Welcome. Good to have you. Actually, I think I want to bring the chat window in. I want to have the option to do that. Let's set up the chat window. Ecamm Live and comments. Why don't I see it? Why don't I see the comments? I should be seeing the comments. Let's see what happens when I click on this. Oh, there we go. Well, I can show up when I click on it this way. I've got a new computer, so I'm going through the very fun process of setting up a new laptop, which is always fun. Let's see, where do I want to put a comment? I guess I'll put it there. That's a good spot to put it. It can show up here next to me. But where's my chat window? Oh, looks like I muted my mic by mistake. Oh, I need to check that. Make sure the mic... Okay. Oh, yeah, I got to make sure the mic is working on everything. So, but again, where is my chat window? It says it's here. Like, I'm looking at it. It's just showing me an outline of a box. But anyway, while you all are, I'm just giving people a chance to show up if they want to be here. Then I'm going to be doing live episode of the podcast. All right, I don't know why the chat window's not showing up. I'm not going to pull that up. I don't want to use the whole live stream to troubleshoot that. So, new podcast episodes come out every Friday. I actually record them on Fridays unless I'm traveling or something. And so today I'm going to do a live recording. We'll begin recording in just about 4 minutes. So today I'll give you a sneak peek at the topic that we're going to be talking about: why choosing the positive actually helps us lose weight and stay thin. Like, a lot of people, they like the content that I make because it has a mindset heavy slant to it. And so this will be one of those weeks where it's very heavy on the mindset. And I actually do this in my program. So like in the guild right now, as an example, we're deep in mindset season. It's where I kind of pull out the stops. And as the year winds down, I get more and more like, all right, I'm not holding back. I'm going to just say the truths how they are. And then I sort of ratchet it back. And then in the beginning of the year, though, so starting in about a month and a half, I'll be going back to more data-driven, more of the science and mechanisms of weight loss. But it's just, you can only talk about that stuff so much. And then it's just like, oh, I don't want to talk about it anymore. There's plenty of content out there. And I got to keep this interesting for me, right? Because I want to keep going on and on. So you like the mindset stuff? Yeah. I mean, as I said, it seems to be the thing. Oh, you got the notification? Yes. That's why it is important to subscribe, because then you get the notifications. Actually, speaking of notifications, I want to move there it is. Pre-YouTube. There we go. Subscribe bar. MOV versions. Let's just move this here. Add animation overlay. Yes, please. There we go. If you want to get more videos like this, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Just like today, because that way, just like Karen, you'll get the notification when I do go live. There's a delay. Oh, I have not fixed that. Right. I need to get that corrected. I'm glad you said that. I forgot to test that because, as I said earlier, some of you might have missed it. I'm on a new computer. Okay, do me a favor in the chat. This, hopefully what I just did will actually have synced up my mouth with the sound. Hopefully that did it. So if you could just let me know in the chat. I know there's going to be a momentary delay. We got 2 minutes and then we're going live with recording the podcast live. At that point, I'll stop interacting with the chat and I'm just going to get into full-fledged podcast mind. Wonder how I've talked about the basics for so long. Yeah, I don't just talk about the basics. That's the only reason why. If all I did was talk about the basics, it would be just obnoxious. It would just be awful. Just because it would just get boring, right? Like, but I need to talk about the basics. I want to talk about the basics. I'm going to keep talking about them. All right, so the audio seems fine. Okay, good. But the thing that helps me with the basics is I drift in and out. Because look, if just learning the basics was all that was needed to become thin and stay thin, then okay, then we shouldn't have an obesity problem because the basics have been out there for a long, long time. Because there's just more to it than that, you know. The basics are important. There's no getting out of doing the basics. You have to master the basics. But how to get to the place where you master the basics? Well, that's going to be some of what we're going to talk about today. Because weight management, for those of us that have struggled with weight, the reality is it's a personal growth project in many ways. Okay, we are T-minus 45 seconds from time to record. Let me do a quick sound check on the audio. Okay. So regular, now we'll check the podcast theme. Okay. So that's all working. Got the notes ready. Getting ready to go live again. New episodes come out every Friday. Be sure to stay tuned. And if you want more videos like this, be sure to like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. All right. It is now time to start recording. Okay. I will not be interacting in the comments. I will just be in the zone doing the podcast. You're welcome to listen in and you can see how I do it. If you've never sat in on a live recording of the podcast, I'm going to do this as if you weren't here. So sometimes I may pause and sit in silence. If I lose my train of thought, I just pause and sit in silence because that's easy to find and edit out versus like, I wonder what I could say. So if you see me just go, everything's fine. I'm just collecting my thoughts and thinking what I want to say next. And I'll leave the comments up. I may glance at them, but if I find them distracting, I'll actually turn them off where I can't see them. And you may hear some things every now and then. Something I do in here doesn't make it into the final edit of the episode. So you also might hear things here that are different. Just kind of be mindful of, just know that if you've never sat into a live recording. So with that, notes are ready. Audio's ready. It's time to start. Okay. Do I need to go to the bathroom? I've had that catch me a few times before. Now I'm going to move that down just a smidge. A little more. That's better. Okay. Let's do this. From the headquarters of the Guild of Champions, this is the Becoming Thin podcast. And I am your host, Chris Terrell. And welcome to another week of your weight loss quest. How did this last week go for you, champion? What new challenges did you encounter? But more importantly, what failure did you go through and what lesson did you get from that failure? Come on now. Don't let a perfectly good failure go by without you getting your lesson. That's your reward for your troubles, after all. Now, if you're new here, I lost 125 pounds myself after an entire adulthood of chronic yo-yo dieting. Up, down, up again. Before I finally got sick and tired of being sick and tired and fat and made some permanent, meaningful, and actual changes to my real-life lifestyle, habits, routines, environment, community, and to my systems of belief. because it's all 6 of those things that create the results of my life. And if I wanted to get new results, I was going to have to go change those 6 things. And now I'm here each week to help you make permanent, meaningful, and actual changes to your real life lifestyle habits, routines, environment, community, belief systems. Because if you want to get new results that stick, you're going to have to go all the way to the source. You're going to have to go to the source of what made all of the results in your life happen, which is you. What happens in your mind, what happens in the world around you, the choices you make, the choices you don't make. That's how we do this. For many people, I really wish they would approach weight loss not as a diet, but rather as a personal growth project, as a personal development project, using it as a means of leveling yourself up, leveling your thinking up, leveling your life up. Looking at your entire life and going, I need a new life, but I don't want to replace it with something lesser. I want to upgrade. I want to have upgrades all across the board. So let's look at all the areas of life that aren't how I want them, and let's start making upgrades to them, start making them better. And so for many people, when they go to lose weight, what do? They cut out carbs. Well, that doesn't sound like an upgrade to me. That doesn't sound like an upgrade to me. So we want to make our life improved and better. And the way, if I had to kind of bundle this up, it's don't lose the weight, rather outgrow the weight. I want you to outgrow the excess weight. So you just don't need it anymore. The behaviors, the lifestyle habits and routines that created the weight gain, as well as many other things in your life, and the weight gain probably wasn't the goal. Look at it as, rather than losing weight, you are outgrowing your weight. You're moving beyond it. And that's really how I looked at it with what I did, is I moved beyond the weight. But I didn't move beyond the weight. I moved beyond the life that created the weight gain. I had to make changes to that. But what does that mean, moving past the life that's creating weight gain? Well, you have to change so many things. Now, I mentioned in the beginning of every episode, there's 6 things: lifestyle, habits, routines, environment, community, and belief systems. The belief systems are one of the more pesky ones of all of them, because it impacts everything. It impacts everything. Essentially, you got to change your thinking. You have to change the way you think to something else. That's tricky. Changing your native, natural way of thinking is tricky. Now, the first step is to create awareness to how you are thinking. And the reason why that is so important is because every way of thinking has its opposite. Every way of operating within your mind, there is an opposite way of doing it. And many times, the opposite way can be much more empowering, much more helpful for you as an individual. Different ways of thinking are going to get you different results. Results. All right, let's look at that word. Let's think about that word. Let's replace that word and say that sentence a few different ways. Different ways of thinking will get you different outcomes in life. You'll get different results. Results are outcomes, so I get different outcomes. Well, why do we even care about outcomes? Well, what we're really looking for is to experience something. Often we're looking to experience a feeling, an emotion. So different ways of thinking will get you different results. So we could say different ways of thinking will get you different emotional experiences, because the results will lead to different experiences that you have in life. Emotional experiencing is living. That's what living is. Living is an emotional event. We're experiencing all sorts of feelings, and these feelings cause us to act in different ways. So, however, the other thing that this is implying is that when you change your ways of thinking to get different results, which will get you a different emotional experience, to get new results, that means you did different things. So different ways of thinking will cause you to choose different courses of action. Different ways of thinking will cause you to choose different courses of action. Let me give an example. a real broad general one. Many people operate from a lens of blame within their mind, right? They blame is the kind of the underlying assumption. And when a person begins to operate and think no longer from a place of blame, what they begin to experience is forgiveness. They begin to become a much more forgiving person when you move beyond blame. And the cool thing is, when you do that, you actually don't just direct that at others. You also direct it inwardly towards yourself. And if you first start with doing it inwardly towards yourself, it won't stop there. Once you have moving from blaming yourself to forgiving yourself, you'll find it easier to then shift that outwardly to others. You can pick either one. Working on one helps the other. So working on not blaming others and instead choosing a more forgiving position, that's going to help you do the same thing for yourself. And if you, with yourself, stop taking a blaming position and instead start taking a more forgiving position, you'll find it easier to then extend that to others. There's another thing, that a common saying that probably many people have heard, and probably you listening, and that's where focus goes, energy flows. Where focus goes, energy flows. So we're talking the focus of the mind. The mind can focus your attention on things. You have sort of this flood attention that's just sort of paying attention to the general, like a floodlight. And then you have spotlight attention, like super focus. And you can focus it so much that it becomes like a laser, singularly focused on something. But that's where all the energy is going. That spotlight focus brings a lot of energy with it. And so the focus, your thought energy, is the fuel of your emotional experience. Your focus is the fuel of your emotional experience. Your focus is the fuel. That means when you have some sort of emotion, let's think of an emotion like a small fire. Not because a fire is bad or good, just fire, right? Sometimes fire is good, sometimes fire is bad. Just fire. Fire is neutral. So if I have a fire, let's say my focus is gasoline, fuel. If I go to that fire and pour gasoline on it, as in put more focus on it, more fuel, the fire is going to get bigger. It doesn't matter if it's a good fire. It doesn't matter if it's a bad fire. Like if I'm cold and I'm camping, that's a good fire. I want that. It keeps me warm. If I'm inside my living room, I don't want a fire in the middle of my living room floor. That's a bad fire. We shouldn't pour gasoline on that one. That'll burn your house down. And so think of negative outcomes, negative emotional experiences in your life. If you take your focus and direct it towards the negative and then leave it there and then intensify the focus, what will happen to the emotional fire? Again, not good or bad. It will just intensify. So if you have negative potential outcomes and you just continue to focus on them, your brain is going to make them more and more intense. You're providing the energy to the negative. Let me give a real example from my life. We're talking, this has been going on for 2 years. The next chapter in this journey continued today. So let's rewind the clock a couple of years ago. I get a letter from the Arkansas State Income Department, and I open it up, and it says I owe them like, I don't know, $13,000 or something. And I'm like, what? How could I owe them $13,000? Because when you open it up, it just has the amount that you owe. And then when I got this, I had never gotten one of these from Arkansas before. So I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, this doesn't, why? Why do I owe this? Why are they saying I do this? And I'm reading it and it says, look at the back. I'm like, and I flip it over. And on the back, it has 2020, the amount I owe, the penalty, the interest, which is, man, government scares. They add a lot of markup when you miss. But I'm looking at it, I'm like, 2020, I didn't even live in Arkansas in 2020. I lived in Chicago. I lived in Illinois for 2020, and for a couple of months I lived in Kansas. Like, I wasn't even here. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, what do I do? How do I solve this? And right away, my brain's like, oh no, you're going to end up having to pay $13,000 that you don't even know. Why would you even be, and my brain immediately wanted to go to all this like, And so I call my CPA, and he's like, oh, it happened for this reason that triggered an automated thing probably on their end. And he's walking me through it, and I'm like, okay, cool. What do I do? He's like, oh, you need to send them information showing that you weren't here, you were there, and then they can fix that. And I'm like, okay. So I did that, and I sent it in, and apparently it hadn't gotten resolved. Look, I'm not saying this the dog on the thing. Administrative stuff happens. I'm not. That's not what this is about. This isn't me complaining about the state government or taxes or anything. That's not what this is. This is about the experience. Because how would you feel if you opened up a letter saying you owed $13,000 on your personal income taxes to the state and you weren't even living there at the time? Like, that would be, how would you feel emotionally when that happened? What would you think? What would you do if you opened up and saw a $13,000 bill from the IRS? Like, that's a scary thing, right? And so I gather up all the information and I send it in, and I'm thinking everything's good. And then today or yesterday, I get a letter from the state, and I'm like, okay, what's this? Can I get letters from the state? Before I run a business, I have my own, I pay taxes. So, you get things from them. That's not unusual. And I open it up, and again, another huge bill. I'm like, what in the world? And I turn it over. It's the same thing. And here's the thing. Last time it happened, it was like a day before I could get to my CPA to talk to him. And then it took me a few days to gather all the information. So my brain was constantly like, oh no, you're going to end up paying all this money. And it was constantly being flooded with worry and doubt and all sorts of terrible potentialities for the future. And I remember I'm like, no, use this as an exercise. Use this happening as a chance to practice focusing on something else. And I'll tell you what I focused on here in a second. And so it happened again later, today, because I opened the letter up this morning, is when I opened it. And I was like, as soon as I read it, I immediately heard all the old scary thoughts. And then I said, we don't want to feel that way. We do want to resolve this. But in the meantime, I don't want to be working myself up into a tizzy as I do this. And so, of course, my brain flashes these random thoughts that are conjured out of the ether of something terrible and scary about this. But what I found helps is just to let those thoughts float on by like a cloud. Let it float on by and maintain my gaze, my mental focus on something entirely different, on a different belief. And what I chose to focus it on is the belief that everything always works out somehow in the end. Everything always works out somehow in the end. And that's what I focused on last time. Everything worked out somehow in the end. And here it is 2 years later, and it's still not resolved. But you know what? I haven't had a bunch of mental suffering about this. Now, to be fair, I thought it was done. It's not. But it's happening now. And I could have got immediately, I'm like, I could feel the scary thoughts. I'm like, nope, just let them go. Just let them drift on by. Everything's going to be fine. You're going to figure this out. Everything will get solved. Even if somehow you end up paying money you don't owe, it'll all be fine. You can go earn more money. It's not a problem. And I just reassure myself like that. And I send my focus there. Now, here's why this is so important. Well, of course, I need to call the state and I need to find out what's going on. And this time I'm not going through my CPA. I'm just going to do it myself. And nothing against the CPA. I mean, my guy's great. Actually, he might be listening to it. So it's like, it's not about that. It's just like, I'm just going to call. Like, I need to just call firsthand, talk to somebody, find out what I need to do. And the office is open in 10 minutes. I'm going to wait. As soon as and I'm waiting for 8 o'clock. As soon as it hit 8, I hit send. I'm like, I'm going to get them right away first thing. I'm not waiting in some long call queue. And here's the thing. I get on the call. The agent, she was very lovely, very polite, very friendly. I was being polite and friendly. And it was honestly a pleasant exchange. She said, this is exactly what you need to do. She sent me an email, like, you need to get this, you need to send it back. And I'm like, okay, great. And I told him, like, I thought I did this before, but I guess I didn't, or I must have messed it up. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. We're here. So thank you for helping me. And here's the thing. This has not ruined my day. This has not ruined my morning. I'm handling it. I was going to handle it either way. Either way, I was going to handle it. But I can handle it and be miserable, or I can handle it and be neutral, or something else, right? Either way, I need to handle it. But if I get myself all worked up, here's what might happen. A, I might get so stressed, I won't handle it because I get really stressed. And B, if I get on the call, I'll be a big old bundle of nerves and I might start taking it out on the agent who 100% has the power to make this miserable for me and 100% has the power to just not be that helpful. Should they do that or not? Irrelevant question. Irrelevant. And so that's where I've learned, like, just be friendly. You get a better result. It works out better when you're nice. But it would be very difficult to do this if I didn't maintain my conscious gaze and focus, which is the fuel of my emotional experience. It would be difficult to feel this way if I wasn't maintaining that focus on the belief that everything works out in the end. Everything will sort itself out. Everything always gets taken care of, providing I handle it, right? I need to handle it, but like, it's okay to handle it and be neutral and just be like, I don't know what's happening. I'm not going to choose to feel anything. I'm not going to add any story to what is happening. I'm just going to let what's happening, what is happening right now. I'm just going to let it happen and I'm going to let it unfold and we'll get this resolved because I'm going to get it resolved. Now, why am I sharing this with you? Because this is 100% one of the things in the past that would have sent me into emotional eating. 100%. I had gotten a letter like this. Yeah. That would have made me turn to some food. I'd have been like all stressed and worried about it until I have to know that it's all going to be okay because it's resolved. Well, man, that just puts me through a lot of suffering. What if I just assume it's all going to work out? And then I can enjoy my life in the meantime while I handle it. Well, that sounds like a much more enjoyable way to go. Look, I've done life both ways. I've done life where I let myself get all worked up. And I've let myself do it where I focus elsewhere so I don't get all worked up. One of those pathways was far more emotionally enjoyable than the other. One of them is far more emotionally unpleasant. Both are fine. You pick whichever one you want, just like I've picked every one I want. I spent a lot of years, the majority of my life, in fact, picking the more unpleasant variant of approaching things. And now the last several years of my life, I've been approaching things from a more different way. And it's been a better experience. Now, what we're getting into here, something very important, and this is a concept I wanted to introduce today in the podcast. You might have heard of it, but it's the power of compassionate thinking. So I mentioned earlier as an example, like operating from a place of blame, and then it moves towards forgiveness and things like that, right? That's a frame of reference. So kind of the way, like, okay, this is the lens that I'm going to filter everything through. Think of it like sunglasses. If you wear rosy red sunglasses, like the tint is rosy red, everything is going to have a rosy red tint. Doesn't matter what the actual color is. That's irrelevant. When you look at it through your lens, everything's going to be a rosy red tint. If you have glasses where the green tinted lens, doesn't matter what the actual color of things are, everything you see is going to have a green tint. If your glasses are super dark, have a dark lens, everything is going to look dark even if it is bright. If you have crystal clear lenses, you're going to see things for as it is. The objective, I think, in life is to get to the place where you have crystal clear lenses and you just see things for as they are. But that's tricky and difficult and sometimes a little bland. Sometimes it's nice to put on some rosy red glasses. Like I lost them. It's a bummer. I had some glasses, they had a slight pinkish tint to them. And they were subtle, and I loved those glasses. The reason why I loved those glasses is that subtle pink tint made the outdoors look beautiful. The trees, the sun, the sky. I love landscape. I love nature. It just gave everything a beautiful color to it. It's not the actual color of how things looked. It just enhanced it a little bit and made it very pleasing to my eyeballs. So I'm not going to sit here and say it's bad that we have a tinted metaphorical lens in our mind. I'm just going to say you have one. And maybe the answer that you're looking for to how to change the way you operate is to take one pair of sunglasses off and put a different pair of sunglasses on. See the world differently, as it were. But let's talk about the lens of compassionate thinking. You see, remember what I said earlier, how there's the opposite to everything? Everything has, one way of thinking has an opposite way of thinking. Well, so there's two lenses that we're talking about. We essentially, without even saying it. I'm talking about the compassionate thinking lens right now. Well, therefore, it has an inverse. It has an opposite. That would be a judgmental lens. So you have a compassionate lens that you can view the life and yourself and the world and others through, or you could do the opposite of it, which is a more judgmental based lens. But let's talk about the compassionate lens for a minute first. The best way to describe a compassionate lens is to say it is a lens of understanding. A person that leaves a compassionate lens on will, of course, develop habits that go along with it, right? That's normal. We always develop habitual thought patterns, habitual ways of thinking to go along with any lens that we leave set for a long period of time. It's just an easier way to think. It's how the brain works. It's not a bug, it's a feature. So if a person begins to spend a considerable amount of time operating from a lens of compassion and understanding, they will often develop a mental habit of asking themselves what might be true for the other person that I'm focusing towards. This will make sense in a second, if it's not. You can think of it like you're looking at the actual reality for another person. The actual reality of what is things of going on. Like when I called this agent at the state office this morning, I might have been her first call of the day. Very possible. Because again, I called as soon as they opened. I was on with them in just a handful of minutes after they opened. And I have to remind myself, this is a human being on the other side of this phone call. This is a human being that's just like me. She has a job to do. She wants to take care of her family, maybe. She wants to take care of herself at a minimum. Wants to feed herself, save money to go on a vacation, buy some gifts for loved ones, have the basic financial needs met, and not hate coming to work. And I got to imagine it can be, when you work at a government agency like that, you probably get a lot of grumpy people calling in that aren't quite operating this way. Not to judge them. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying some people aren't choosing a compassionate lens. They're choosing the judgmental lens. And they might be feeling angry or upset, and they're going to take it out on this person that had nothing to do with it. And so when I have the compassionate understanding, it's even for the state of like, well, this is just an error. This was a mistake. Mistakes happen. I make mistakes. I don't know anybody that doesn't make mistakes. I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm so perfect that I'm going to now expect some other entity to never make a mistake. I got to be real stingy about where I have those kind of standards for. I mean, NASA has killed people by putting them in space shuttles and then blowing them up. Like, they've made really big mistakes. Right? Like if they can make that kind of mistakes, it seems to reason that a government agency can make a clerical error. Right? That can happen. I made mistakes. For all I know, as I said, I sent all this information I thought in before. Well, clearly either they made a mistake or I made a mistake, probably me. But mistakes happen, and that's okay. You see, this is the compassionate view of looking at things. Now, I want to add to this, a compassionate lens does not mean you let bad behavior go by without consequence. Let's say somebody wrongs you. Somebody has been mean to you in your real life, and you want to have a compassionate lens and understanding. And so that means you would look at a person that's being mean to you, recognizing that they act the way they do because of their history, because of their conditioning of their mind, because of fears that they have, because of their unmet needs, of which sometimes humans have a lot of unmet needs, which causes them to have an emotional reaction. And so when thinking of another person's reality and they're being cruel to you, let's say, and you want to have a compassionate lens, you can understand why they're doing it. But that doesn't get them out of accountability. That doesn't get a person out of consequences for the actions that happen. But what compassionate thinking does do is allow room to grow without beating up the person for the fact that there's room to grow. Sometimes when we're looking at the opposite, which we're going to get to it, of compassionate thinking more towards judgmental thinking, is with compassionate thinking, it's okay that there's opportunities for improvement. In fact, it's understood. It's not a negative. And with compassionate thinking, it's okay to be like, okay, what you're doing here, this isn't helping anything, but I understand why you're doing it. Now, let me give you a great example from this. If you haven't seen the medical drama, The Pit on HBO, it's really good. It's very graphic, but it's very good. Very, very good. But there's this scene where a patient is brought in and something wasn't done in the nursing home that the person transferred from. And this younger medical professional made sort of a very judgy comment towards the person, the care team of this individual, the nursing home, before they got there. And the doctor walked in and said basically something to the effect of, they're incredibly busy, probably understaffed. And he gave like some very plausible, probably real reasons for why the mistakes occurred. That's compassionate thinking. That's allowing the fact that people can make mistakes. It's allowing people to be human. Allowing people to be human and not be perfect. It also doesn't assume the worst intentions of the other, even if what they're doing is negatively affecting you. Even if it is causing bad outcomes, compassionate thinking would involve assuming they're not choosing or having bad or ill intentions. Now, if they come clean and you see the truth is the person has ill intentions, well, now these aren't assumptions. You're operating out of fact. You're operating out of what is real. That's different, okay? Think of compassionate thinking as how your mind is filling in the gaps in understanding of what is happening in front of it. That's what our mind tends to do. When there's gaps in understanding, our brain tends to fill in what is happening with story. It fills the gaps in with a made-up story. That made-up story is generated and conjured out of your imagination. And what your imagination conjures and creates is influenced by the frame that you operate out of in that moment. And if in that moment you're operating out of a compassionate lens, when you're filling in the story, you're going to fill it in with things that give people grace. If you're filling in the story with a judgmental lens, then you're probably going to take a different path. So let's move for a moment to talking now about the judgmental lens. I need to run to the restroom, everybody. I will be right back. So bear with me while I return in just a moment. I have to leave it silent so I can find this to edit it out. So I apologize for no background music. Be right back. But before we jump into the judgmental lens framing, I want to just let everybody listening in know that I will be doing a Black Friday sale for the Guild. Some people have been asking if one is going to happen, if they can join the Guild at that time. I initially was not planning on doing it, but I'm going to go ahead and open the doors for that, for those that would like to go ahead and get a jump and getting into the Guild before the big rush at the beginning of the year. So if you've been considering joining the Guild, be sure to stay tuned here to the podcast. Next week, you'll get information on how to join the Guild. You could also join me in the Becoming Thin Facebook group, which you can find by just searching for Becoming Thin on Facebook. It'll be black background, yellow text, and come join the group. I'll definitely be posting about it there. And if I've ever interacted with you via email, I will also send an email out letting everybody know that the doors are open. I'm not going to bombard you over the whole weekend, I promise. but I am going to make sure everybody gets a chance to know. So if you'd like to join that. Also, if you've enjoyed the podcast, please consider giving it a rating and a review. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, I would love it if you gave me a written review. That means a lot, but I want a chance to earn that review. So if you're new here, give me a few listens, give me a chance to earn that rating and review. And if you are on Spotify, you can leave a comment on the episodes. I read every single comment, and I very much enjoy getting those. So please consider leaving a comment on the show. Now let's talk about that judgment lens. We were just talking about the compassionate thinking lens. Let's now talk about the judgment-based lens. So remember we were saying earlier, sensory input is filtered through our lens. And a judgmental lens, it's filtering things through blame, through criticism, and assuming negative intentions of the other. Assuming negative intentions when there's a gap. Remember, your brain fills in its gaps in understanding with story that you conjured using your imagination, and what you conjured using your imagination was filtered and run through your lens. Your place, the way you are operating emotionally in that moment. So how do you know if you're operating from a place of judgment? Well, look at the way you're seeing things, especially look at the way you're seeing things where there's a lot of unknowns. Are you assuming negative motives, or are you assuming negative outcomes? Like, that's the dominant thought patterns that you're observing. That means you are operating out of a judgmental lens. There's no questions to get to the truth of what is happening. This means that individual is usually deciding the intentions of someone else. And they're, remember, leaping to a negative intention and assuming negative emotions with no curiosity behind it. The second telltale sign that a person is operating from a judgmental lens is they're often evaluating outcomes, results, in terms of fault. Who should be punished for this negative, unpleasant, bad outcome? Who should I blame? Who's the reason? Who needs to face a consequence? And that's how things are always evaluated and looked at as that, is where do I apply a consequence because a consequence needs to be applied. A person, if they're operating out of a judgmental lens, will often think of behavior, what they're seeing is a reflection of the person's character, not a reflection of the context. That means sometimes people act not great. They act rude, they act dismissive. Let's use the example of what I was saying earlier about calling the state, or, we'll use another one I've dealt with. Dealing with the gate agent when you're dealing with lost luggage. That lady didn't lose, or man in the lost luggage didn't lose your luggage. Their job is to help you get reunited with your luggage. Their sole existence in that moment at their job is to help you get reunited with your luggage. They literally want to help you solve your problem. And yet what do many people do when they come up to them? They want to assign blame. They need to punish somebody. And they so then you can take this agent there, they can look at this angry person in front of them, this angry customer, with a compassionate understanding or a judgmental understanding. Now, I want to be clear. I am not saying that you should excuse rude behavior from people. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying you have to tolerate poor behavior from others. That's not what I'm saying. But sometimes in life, you are going to interact with somebody that's being unpleasant. And I don't want you to sacrifice your peace because this person in front of you has sacrificed theirs. And it's about looking at this person and going, I understand why they're feeling this way. That makes sense. It makes sense. You lost your luggage. You were planning to get everything here. You thought it was going to be here. You really needed what was in this bag. You already had delayed flights. You're already probably tired and worked up. And you're probably a little testy. That's understandable. I understand. A person could be thinking that in their head. And they could be trying to bring them back down. And of course, if the person doesn't, obviously you got to escalate and deal with them. If a person's just going to insist on being an asshole no matter what, remember, compassionate thinking doesn't get people out of consequences. That's not what that is. It just, you don't sacrifice your own peace. Whereas if the person chose a judgmental lens, they could be like, I didn't do this. You're being a jerk. I'm not going to help you. I'm going to punish you. Why are you here just trying to hurt me? And that might actually be what they're there to do. I mean, their objective might be to make that agent feel pain because they're feeling pain. But again, if you come at it with a compassionate lens, you can go, well, hurt people. That's what they do. Again, it doesn't get people out of accountability. You having a compassionate perspective and lens does not mean you have to stand by and just take everything. That's not what that means. You're allowed to remove yourself from people if they're not going to treat you well, right? You're allowed to, in the case of a job, if you have a bad customer, you're allowed to make that customer go away. You're allowed to quit your job if all your job does is make you deal with unpleasant people. But the other sign of a judgmental way of looking at things is a closed mentality, as in no curiosity. Compassion will often bring curiosity. Wonder what led to that. An explanation, curiosity of the explanation. But a judgmental frame isn't having curiosity. It's making assumptions. It's passing judgments and then just deciding that that's what it is. This person's motive is this. I've decided this person had ill intent behind their actions. That's what I've decided. That's a judgmental frame of reference. Now, look, you could operate out of either way. I'm not trying to say that one is right or wrong. That is up to you to decide what is right or wrong for you. It is up to you to decide what is right and wrong for you. But before you decide, I want to talk about why this is so important and then tie this into why this matters for weight loss and weight management. You see, this is frame of reference and this focus we're talking about. We're talking about focusing it on people. But remember, you are people. You are a people. You're a person. You're a human, just like everybody else. People are individuals. You're an individual. You are part of the people. And so here's the really cool thing. When you practice, and you do have to practice, adopting a new lens, a new mental frame of reference, a new way of operating, when you do it with others, it will become easier to do it toward yourself. But it's not a guarantee because there's a lot of mental cognitive biases that would prevent a person from fully turning this inward. And so what I have found actually is when you're practicing, let's say you've decided you want to shift into a more compassionate lens, which while I'm not going to say it's right or wrong, I am going to plead the case for why I think you might seriously consider actively moving your mind towards a more compassionate lens as a standard way of operating, is when you turn that focus inwards and work on yourself. And all right, I need to practice being compassionate. So where can I get the most reps? I can do it with myself. I'm a human. So I often think about what I do, what I did, what I didn't do. I think about myself a lot. I imagine you think about yourself a lot. Yourself. I think about my ego. I think about what I'm doing. I think about my life. I imagine you do too. You're probably listening to this podcast, hearing me, but thinking about you. That's what I'm hoping is happening. I'm hoping this podcast makes you think about yourself is what I'm hoping happens. And so you can begin to practice being compassionate with yourself every single day, multiple times a day. Because if you want to become better at this, you have to practice. If you don't practice, you won't become better at it. And let's take an instrument. If you have two people, same talent, each getting a 1-hour piano lesson once a week, but one of them practices every day for an hour and the other one practices once every other week for 30 minutes. Even though they both have the same level of natural talent, I think we all know that one of these two is going to improve way faster than the other and is going to actually become a good pianist, whereas the one that doesn't practice will probably scrub out. because they'll progress so slowly, it's not going to be fun. They'll never get out of the boring piano playing to the good piano playing. They're not getting the reps in. Think of your mind the same way you think of a muscle. If you want to improve a muscle, you use it. If I want to make a stronger bicep, I do bicep curls. That makes a stronger bicep. If I want to become better at playing the piano, I play the piano more. But here's the interesting thing about playing a piano. It is training your muscles, your body, but it is also training your mind. You literally have to use your mind in a different way. And then eventually get to the place that the way you play the piano becomes automatic. You look at the notes and your fingers just go where they're supposed to go automatically. You don't have to consciously stop and go, that note is that note, which is that part on that key, and push it now. That's way too slow. Thinking is just like learning an instrument. It's just like learning a language. You need reps. The more reps you can get, the better. And so if you want to begin operating from a more compassionate lens, you need reps. And I want you to grow. I want you to have an enjoyable experience in life. And one of the things that comes with compassionate thinking is looking at a person and saying, this person in front of me is doing the best they know how in this moment. In this moment, they're doing the best they know how. What if you did that with yourself? What if you would turn that towards yourself all the time? I'm doing the best I know how. My best may not be enough. It may not be taking me where I want to go. There's still room to grow. There's still room for improvement. I've got a lot of improvement, actually, but that's okay. That's not bad. I don't need to make myself feel bad or punished for doing it. When I'm on the way working on this, I don't need to punish myself for having made mistakes, because mistakes are part of the process of improving. And think about it. If you begin to focus and practice doing that with yourself, eventually it will become real. Eventually you will actually begin to think this way natively on your own. And the cool thing is, it is easier to transfer this outwardly. So you begin to change how you view and treat yourself. It then becomes easier to change how you view and treat others. Technically, it works the other way, where you can work on how you treat others, which will change how you treat yourself, but it is not a guarantee. It's like getting healthier does not guarantee you're going to lose weight. You can improve your health across the board and not lose any weight. But losing weight is probably going to help you get healthy. It's probably going to become easier. Why? Because as you lose weight, it's going to become easier to exercise. And as it becomes easier to exercise, you're going to get all the health benefits that come from exercise. And because you've lost weight, because you're now exercising, your health is improving. You're not on a health journey, you're on a weight loss journey, but an effect, a collateral, not collateral damage, a secondary benefit is that your health will improve some on its own. As you're losing weight, you will begin to notice that foods that have a lot more to offer from a nutrient standpoint, you might even say they are quote unquote healthier, not healthy, but healthier. You will notice that many times they are lower in calorie. They're less calorie dense, which makes it where you can feel full. And you will naturally begin to choose healthier, not healthy, healthier foods. And so your health will improve because you're you're giving your body more of what it needs. And because you're also exercising, your body's health is improving. And because for weight loss, we want your body operating well, so you should be sleeping. And the sleeping is going to help your mind operate better, which is going to improve your mental health, but it's also going to improve how your body functions, which is going to improve your physical health. And because your mind is operating better, you're going to make better choices. All of this leads to health. You see how the health just improves as a byproduct? You don't even need to make the health the goal. When you set off to lose weight the way I'm trying to teach you, your health is just going to improve naturally as a byproduct. Is it going to get you ultimately where you want to go? No, you might have to do some other things. But working on your health does not mean you're necessarily going to lose weight. Lots of people go off on a health journey and get fatter. So it's not a guarantee this way. And so when you're thinking of, okay, I want to practice compassionate thinking, should I practice this with others as the primary, or should I practice it with myself as the primary? My thoughts are practice with yourself, because you will just probably automatically start doing it with others. But if you do it with others, there is no guarantee you're going to take that lens and divert it inward. Because some of you might be doing this for others for purely narcissistic, egoic reasons. Some people are trying to be compassionate to others as a way of fueling the ego. Look at me. I'm such a compassionate person. I'm so good. Oh, look at all these people telling me how great and how compassionate I am. Oh, this is making me so good. And literally they begin to use being compassionate to others as a sort of egoic supply for themselves. So this is something you need to be mindful of, right? If you're going to do something virtuous for somebody else, if you're doing it to get praise for being virtuous, are you being virtuous? Is it truly altruism in that moment? I don't know. I'm going to let you sit with that and think about it. But this is such an important concept. And I think that you will find it easier to become thin and stay thin if you adopt a compassionate frame of reference towards yourself. Because it'll be easier to look to yourself and understand why you gained your weight. As you begin to shift away from blaming, you go, I don't need to blame myself for gaining the weight. I don't need to blame anybody. It happened. I did the best I knew how under the circumstances. And when I consider the emotional state of mind that I was in at the time, and we can consider the environment I was in at the time, and we consider the knowledge that I had and understood at the time, it becomes easy to see that like, oh, okay. Yeah, weight gain kind of makes sense that I gained weight in that environment. That's understandable. But we're not going to keep doing this, self. We got to go a different direction. It's okay that we have lots of room for improvement. It's okay. It's not a problem. We're not going to feel bad about this. But we are going to improve. We are going to handle it. But we don't need to make ourselves miserable along the way. We can allow ourselves to enjoy ourselves. We can enjoy our company, enjoy our thoughts, enjoy being with ourselves. And when you begin to practice this with all sorts of other things, especially when you begin to adopt a belief that everything's just going to work out in the end somehow everything's going to work out in the end. When you begin to adopt that, well, you'll begin to make different choices. Some of those choices will be you begin to not emotionally eat as much. And when you don't emotionally eat as much, it's easier to lose weight slowly. A lot of people are wanting to lose weight quickly because they want to lose weight faster than their emotional eating is causing weight gain. They want to out diet their emotional eating tendencies. But if you get rid of the emotional eating tendencies, you don't have to lose weight in miserable ways. You can do it nice and slow. And that's what makes working on the emotional eating so important, because you don't have to do the extreme methods of weight loss. Because the extreme methods of weight loss are quite unsustainable in many ways. And if you're looking to get more help with this stuff on the mindset things, I want to just, again, invite you just to stay tuned. Be sure to follow the podcast or be in the Facebook group or on my email list. I'm opening the Guild doors next week. This is the sort of stuff that we work on in the Guild. This is the sort of stuff I coach people on. If you like this mindset work, I got like 100 hours of stuff like this, all searchable. And I promise, a lot of people are like, yeah, I'll just get it all from your free stuff. No, I have hundreds of hours of content that you cannot get for free. It is not out there. You get it behind the Guild. Why? Because I need to have certain ways of presenting it and that are more suitable. And also, I want it to be for people that are serious, people that are ready to do the work. And so I have beginner to advanced mindset work in the Guild. I have emotional eating coursework in there. I have intuitive eating, intentional eating coursework in there, stuff on data-driven weight loss, how to use data to help you lose weight, how to do habit-based weight loss. And it's all in there. I mean, 500 hours of content in the Guild, and then we have the community itself, which is a tremendously powerful thing. We do lots of live meetings every week, day, night, evenings, weekends. Tomorrow morning, I'm hosting a support group for people that started their weight loss journey north of 300 pounds, and only people north of 300 pounds are to come to that. Like, wouldn't you like to be able to sit in a weight loss support group meeting where there are people in the room that have become thin who are over 300 pounds, and you're 350 pounds, and it gives you a little bit of hope, a little bit of faith that you can do this. Like, these are powerful meetings to be in, and this is what you have access to in the Guild. But we got to work on changing our thinking, because if we change our thinking, we're going to get new results in life. And one of the results that's new I want you to get in life is a result of not turning to food to solve your problems in life, to not be emotionally eating through everything. But it's up to you how you decide you want to live. You can pick a compassionate view of yourself, or you can pick a judgmental view of yourself. You can take a blame-centered approach or a forgiveness-centered approach towards yourself. Either one is okay, but they will not get you the same emotional experience in life. One of them will be much more pleasant and enjoyable than the other, You might get to the exact same place both ways, but I think the way you get there matters. I think you deserve to live a life that you love all along the way. So go have a great week on your weight loss journey. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week on the Becoming Thin podcast. Thank you for coming and listening to the podcast with me this week. Those of you here on YouTube, there's not a ton of you here left at this point, but that's okay since it's unscheduled middle of the day. But so glad to have you here listening. Thanks for all the support and everything you do to help me keep doing this show. To keep, please keep sharing the podcast with others. Getting in front of more people. If you have an episode that really stands out to you, I'd love it if you could share with other people. And if you like this and want to get more videos like this, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell. You'll be notified anytime I go live. And I go live here every Monday morning at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time-ish. Sometimes I'm a few minutes late, but right around there. I'm going to wrap up now. I got to head off to my maintenance mastery session in the guild because we even have maintenance programming in there because we got thin people that want to stay thin. So have a great day, everybody. And to those of you in the guild, I'll see you in the guild. Talk soon.